All right, it is Wednesday. The week is flying by, is it not? Indeed it is. Lots of rain yesterday and more rain in the forecast for later in the week. But again, like I said, I'll be a broken record. It's better than snow any day. I'll take it any day. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. I'd like to thank Veinotte as well on the other side of the glass at the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. We will open the phone lines today between noon and 1. Because on Wednesday, Dr. John Gillis will be by for house calls, and we'll take your health-related questions between 11 and 12. And again, take your general calls between noon and 1. Prime Minister Carney has certainly breathed new life into the Liberal Party as a new Ipsos poll shows the party widening its lead over the Conservatives even further since Carney's arrival. The poll published yesterday by Ipsos Public Affairs exclusively for Global News found that if a federal election were held tomorrow, the Liberals would secure 42% of decided voter support compared with 36% for the Conservatives, widening their lead over the Tories by 7 points in just 3 weeks. Stunning turnaround for sure. I guess some of the questions that I'll ask you is, do you believe that these polls are accurate? Because Leger, Abacus, all of the main polling firms here, Nanos in Canada, are saying generally the same thing. There's some varying degrees with the numbers, but for the most part, they're saying the same thing. A massive resurgence for the Liberals. And look, is it Justin Trudeau's departure? Was he that unpopular? Was it the fact that Mark Carney is likable or not? Is it Pierre Poilievre? What is going on here? And do you believe the polls? That's the question, because not everybody does. There's people out there who just believe that these polls are dead wrong. And some believe that polls are corrupt. Pollsters are bought and sold. I don't subscribe to that, but some of you do. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to ask you when we open the phone lines. Also, the Conservative Party is breaking from tradition, will not allow media on board planes and buses to cover Pierre Poilievre's election campaign, which I think is a mistake. I think that if you want to have as many eyeballs on you as you can when you're campaigning. And I just think that it's a mistake. However, they obviously don't. And look, the Conservatives perhaps have pivoted away from what they call mainstream media and focus on online media, YouTube, podcasts, etc. It's got a huge following out there now on the internet, and look, it proved true in the United States with right-leaning podcasts. Joe Rogan and all the rest had a lot of influence and a lot of power, and perhaps the Conservatives feel as though they can spend and give more credence to that type of media over the traditional mainstream media. So what are your thoughts on that? Also, this story, Nova Scotia's opposition leaders raising questions about an undisclosed trip by a provincial cabinet minister to U.S. President Donald Trump's inauguration in January. Social Development Minister Scott Armstrong said he didn't attend the actual ceremony, but he did watch the event from Canada's embassy, where he was able to talk to business leaders and conduct media interviews. Interim Liberal leader Derek Momberquette says taxpayers' money was used by a minister whose portfolio has nothing to do with international trade. Claudia Gender says she takes issue with the fact Armstrong's trip wasn't announced publicly. According to an expense report filed by Armstrong, the total cost of the trip was $3,288. Do you care that Scott Armstrong was in Washington for Trump's inauguration? Do you care if local politicians support Trump? Should they hide their support if, in fact, they do support Donald Trump? Some other things that you can get into and anything else that you'd like to talk about, we will open the phone lines, as mentioned, between noon and 1. Thanks to Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. And again, thanks so much for tuning in and listening. All right, let's jump right into our first guest. Saw this story. The headline, she wasn't told she has cancer. She says that could have been a death sentence. Experts say case exposes cracks that remain in Nova Scotia healthcare system. Cathy Croskery, that's how you say your name, Cathy? Croskery. There you go. Cathy Croskery joins me in the studio to share her story. Cathy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my honor.
My, oh my, what a adventure you've been on, eh?
It's been a trip.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't want to take the trip.
I'll bet. So I guess start from the start. Where did this all begin?
Back in 2018, I had a sebaceous cyst in my right breast, and I thought when I moved here that it was just acting up again. But the pressure felt somewhat different, so I started on my voyage to try and get a mammogram because I knew that I was due. And so it was probably in 2023 that I noticed that. And I tried many avenues to get the help that I needed. I went to walk-in clinics, and most times those were booked up completely before they even opened the door. So that was a couple times that I got turned away from that. I went to the Shoppers Drug Mart, but they are pharmacist-led care, and unfortunately they can't do any referrals. I went on to the Nova Scotia health app as well as Maple a couple times, and my sessions timed out. So I never got to seek or get any assistance, but they did get to bill for it because I got the response email saying, "Oh, how was your appointment?" Well, I didn't have an appointment. I got nothing. I called the breast screening clinic, and they refused to see me because I had a lump, which I found really bizarre. And I kind of thought that is a little bit redundant because what are they going to do? Well, what's the point? If you're just going to feel and look for lumps and there's nothing you can do about it, then you're redundant, in my opinion.
Right.
So there has to be something much, much better than that. So, to be told, well, if you have a lump, we can't see you, you need to see a doctor. Well, I don't have a doctor.
And then the lump was self-diagnosed by you, right?
That was by me, yes.
Right. So
because it wasn't in the same position as the previous cyst.
Right. So to me, that's even more strange that you would self-diagnose. That would be a sense of urgency to get you into for screening.
Correct.
Right.
Like when you have a lump, you pretty much know it. It's definitely a very, very different feeling.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many women are running to go get a mammogram and have their boobs squished.
Yeah.
So why can't I just go and self-refer for a mammogram? If I know I need one, I'm looking for an answer to a question.
And no family doctor, of course.
No family doctor. I have a family of 5. We moved from Burlington, Ontario.
When? How long ago?
That was in the summer of 2022. So I'm coming up on 3 years of a family of 5 not having a doctor.
Wow.
And I don't see an end in sight right now.
Did you have a doctor in Burlington?
I did, yes. We all had a doctor in Burlington. Wow. And the services were quite different over there. I could leave my doctor's office and walk across the street and book an appointment for an ultrasound, get a mammogram. I could go down the street with my blood work paperwork and walk right in and get my blood work and urine samples done and have my results immediately after processing, obviously, loaded up to the laboratory that they use so that I could view my results and my tests all online and have control over my healthcare. So in this situation, I'm feeling incredibly vulnerable. I'm feeling very left out and just not looked after. It's very disheartening, and my son has also faced some challenges as well. Mm-hmm. He was diagnosed with H. pylori, but not given the test. Just diagnosed out of the blue. Well, this is what it is. Here's a 10-day course of antibiotics. Bye-bye. Mm-hmm. And he's gone back several times to get that dealt with. And there is a test specifically for it, and they won't do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he probably needs an endoscope. Mm-hmm. But they're just not doing what they need to be doing, and there's obviously not enough staff. And so anyways, back onto my story. After I did all of that, I decided to finally go and put the hours in at Cobequid emergency, only to have the breast examined with a nurse present, told, yep, you definitely have a lump. I asked for the referral, and they said, no, we don't do referrals here. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I need a mammogram. He said, we don't do that here. And he wrote on the top of their prescription pad the number for Bedford Basin Women's Health Clinic.
Whoa.
So that took me another month to get that appointment. Wow. And then to get the mammogram after that appointment. Mm-hmm. And then to get in for the follow-up ultrasound and biopsy after that appointment. Mm-hmm.
And you were, it wasn't as though they were calling you. You had to call them.
It was me, Hunt.
If you would have just went radio silent, this would have just gone into the abyss.
Yes, it would have very much, because I have no one looking after me. And what they're not understanding is that the people that don't have a doctor, we are literally the most vulnerable population right now in this province, because there's no one we can turn to. no one that can follow up with us, no the one that can do the referring, and we're lost.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just unacceptable.
Yeah. And beyond that, if people aren't proactive and don't have the gumption, some people don't have the mental capacity to do the follow-ups, right? Very
much so. And there's so many systems. I mean, I do applaud the governments and the people for trying to get systems in place. That's commendable. But there's overlap, there's duplication, there's red tape, it's a very unnecessary circus that needs to be streamlined. I've got 2 different apps for Nova Scotia. There's Maple, there's Nova Scotia Health. And I mean, you've got your pharmacy people, you've got your breast screening people, and it really needs to be centralized and to the point of where I can look at it and manage it myself. Mm-hmm. And if I need help to be able to reach out and say, look, I've found this lump, can I get a referral? And someone goes, yep, okay.
Yeah.
And not just don't poo-poo me thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't have your credentials.
Right.
I'm still a female. I still know my body, and I expect that to be respected.
Yeah. So where are you now? How did this all land?
Well, what had happened was after I had the biopsy done, they asked for 7 to 10 days to give me the results. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't have a family doctor, they took Bedford Women's Health completely out of the equation. And I don't know if that's the directive that they have to do, that's the procedure that they're supposed to follow. But they literally took the referring clinic and doctor out of the equation and asked me specifically for my phone number to follow up with me directly. So I confirmed my number, and I was asked to give them actually 2 weeks because it was Christmas time. So I gave them the 2 weeks, and I didn't hear anything. And then I gave another 2 weeks, still not hearing anything. And then my girlfriend asked me how I was doing. And I said, well, no news is good news. And as I was typing it to her, it was a slap in my face of saying, if she was typing this to you, you would probably walk over there and slap her. Yeah. So I took that slap and I picked up the phone and I called back to Bedford Women's Health and said, look, this is what's happened. I'm being overlooked. I'm being neglected, and I don't know how to get my results. I know that you're not my doctor. Please follow up though and find them for me. Mm-hmm. And when she called me back, she said, I am so sorry to tell you, you have cancer. And just totally gobsmacked. Wow. She asked me to, and she was very upset actually because. And
she was probably not in a position to make that, have that conversation with you.
No, because she's not my doctor, so that had to have been very awkward, but obviously a very necessary conversation because that was supposed to happen on the hospital's end, and it did not. So unfortunately, that's what transpired there. She asked me to give her a couple of weeks to get in touch with the surgeon, and she called me back within 3 days. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the service that I've gotten when I've gotten it has been tremendous. Mm-hmm. It's the loopholes, it's the red tape, and it is the cracks in the system and the duplication and the not being centralized enough for me to take control of my healthcare. Yeah. That's where I'm seeing the problems in the system.
Okay, so you had the surgery?
I did. I went in on the 21st and I had a lumpectomy done. And they also took 3 of the lymph nodes from the underarm. Mm-hmm. That got sent off to California for further testing to, I guess they give it a score so that they can further tailor my treatment. Because at this point they're thinking hopefully that chemotherapy will not be needed, that I will be able to get away with just radiation and hormone pills because this is a hormone issue. Mm-hmm. So yes, I have my follow-up on the 25th. And hopefully I'll have some really good news at that point and start my treatment and be done with this.
So start your treatment. What might treatment options be?
My treatment is looking like it's going to be radiation and hormone replacement therapy because it's a hormone issue that is causing this. Hopefully I don't have to go down the chemo route, but we'll find out more when we get that score back.
And the stress that's been added to it just anybody knows who deals with health issues, stress just magnifies everything tenfold, right?
Very much. I've found myself quite weepy, but not in a sad sense. Recently went through a bit of a spiritual awakening, which was very bizarre for me. And so I'm relying more on a faith than I ever have.
Yeah.
And my family, of course, is there for me, my friends, my neighbors. I have a lot of love in my life, and I'm trying to turn this into a positive situation because I don't want this to be happening to anybody else.
Right. So what advice do you give people listening right now who may be going through something similar or will be going through something similar?
It's really hard. Lean on your friends, your family. Lean on the people that you know have spoken for you. But don't give up. You have to be your advocate, especially if you do not have a family doctor. You are going to have to do the legwork, and it is exhausting. It can be very disheartening, but it literally is your health. And until the government makes those, identifies that we are the vulnerable people right now and actually puts some form of a task force on us to say, okay, these people need to be directed immediately. If they've got concerns and issues, we need to be able to hook them up with resources as soon as possible because there's nobody for them. And that's kind of where I'd like to see it going.
And still no family doctor?
No. But the health authority did call me. I had a lovely lady reach out to me. I've had actually a lot of phone calls and emails reaching out to me. There's a company right now that is trying to do a startup of a web program for healthcare that reached out to me. So they're doing their own development to try and solve the problems. There's ladies that have reached out to me that are also facing the same issues. Right now, I had a lady that texted me and said she tried to book her mammogram, and Cobequid is booking February 2026.
Oh, my gosh.
2026. Whoa. That's a death sentence for somebody.
Yeah.
And the earliest she could get was, I think, June or September in Kentville.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just the services are very, very difficult to access, and the knowledge is very hard to find, and it literally is running through hoops. Yeah.
Well, Cathy, listen, I appreciate you coming in and sharing your story. I know it's very difficult, and it's very, very brave of you to do so. And the best of luck here moving forward.
Thank you so much.
And let's hope that this does some good. I'm sure that it will.
I thank you so much for this opportunity. A shout out as well to my friend there, Allie, who's been a staunch advocate for this and doing her part too. So I really do appreciate you too as well, Todd.
Okay, thanks,
You've
Cathy.
been amazing.
Excellent. Cathy Croskery. Did I say your name right? I didn't. Did I? Croskery? Is that enough?
Croskery is good.
Okay.
Either or.
Okay. Cathy, thanks for coming in. When we come back, Barry MacKenzie, Monarchist League of Canada, will be back. All right, joining us for a chat is Barry MacKenzie, the Monarchist League of Canada. Barry, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Todd.
All right, so King Charles, many people looking to King Charles at this point to take a stand against what Donald Trump has said concerning Canada and the 51st state and all the chiding that's gone on, but somewhat limited by protocol as to what he can say or do. What are the expectations, realistic expectations from King Charles at this time?
I think the king is absolutely limited, not least because he's supposed to be above politics in any one of his realms, but particularly, of course, because he's in the delicate situation of having to heed the advice of a variety of different prime ministers. And we're seeing that the current British prime minister is taking a different approach to Mr. Trump from what we're seeing from Mr. Trudeau, now Mr. Carney. And so that puts the king in a position, of course, of having to tread very carefully. So what we can expect to see, Todd, I think, is more of what's been happening already, these sort of subtle symbolic gestures of support to Canadian sovereignty that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, leading right up to the last couple of days with his meeting with the new prime minister. And so it's in these moments that a monarch can use those very suggestive elements of soft power to sort of tell people, paying attention on the world stage, that he is very much in touch with what's happening in Canada and sympathetic to the situation in which we found ourselves since the election of Trump as president.
Yeah, can you empathize with some people who would say that, look, King Charles is the head of state, and the expectation would be that the head of state should be more vocal when it comes to defending the country, perhaps not understanding the nuance of royalty and how this all works?
Yeah, well, that's the tricky element, isn't it? So what we have in our system of constitutional monarchy, our sovereign is bound, by, in political terms, by the advice of the prime minister of the day. And so we won't anticipate, unless, if there's something very extreme and unusual, that the king would sort of make a political statement. It's not in the best interest of either the king or the prime minister of the day to sort of insert the sovereign into political affairs, which is why we see this division between authority and power, the authority being the king's and the power being ultimately the prime minister's in practical terms, which can be frustrating. There's no question at times when we'd love to have the king sort of stand up and make those sorts of statements. The crown has been protected from that sort of being tarnished by these political things for so long that it would only be in extreme circumstances that we might expect something to be said. If the king was still Prince of Wales, when he was much more outspoken about a variety of things, we probably could have expected something a bit more, perhaps a bit more, out there. But at the moment, we're seeing these subtle symbols, everything from the very clear messaging on the anniversary of the Maple Leaf flag in February to his meeting with Black Rod last week to the two kneeling prayer stools that were used, a gift from the Canada Club at the Commonwealth Day observance last week at Westminster Abbey. All of these symbols to the world that the king is very much engaged with what is happening, but bound by constitutional advice not to wade into what's obviously very frustrating for many of us here.
Right. What about the current Prince of Wales then? There is a Prince of Wales. Maybe we could expect something from him?
Theoretically, we could, yeah. I mean, there's nothing sort of binding him. It's all by convention, right? So the current Prince of Wales seems very different from his father. Charles, as Prince of Wales, was very open about a whole variety of issues, sometimes to the extent that that made him unpopular when he spoke out about the environment and sustainable agriculture and all different sorts of things like that. William is much more, plays his cards much closer to his chest, so it's unlikely we're going to see things. There is a bit of there is a certain amount of conjecture about even the choice of gown that the Princes of Wales wore last week to the Commonwealth Day observance, very much a maple leaf red, if that was, the Wales' own subtle nod to Canadian sovereignty at this particular time. The unfortunate thing about all of this is that, the nature of it means that no one ever says these things out loud. And so it's up to us to observe and interpret these symbols, even if they are particularly obvious, because no one from Buckingham Palace or from Rideau Hall is going to come out and say, yes, the king knelt on those parades year, or the Princes of Wales wore this color in support of Canada at this time, because that's just not how things are done, for better or for worse.
So King Charles did step outside of these norms and these protocols and these parameters. Would there be any blowback or any ramifications or any consequences?
I think so, yeah. I mean, in terms of one of the reasons that the monarchy continues to survive is the fact that it's managed to sort of raise itself above politics. And the fact that it's a shared institution with all of these other realms, some of which are approaching Trump in a very different way than our prime minister is, means that he's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. So he could stand up as King of Canada, and we know that's a legally separate position that he holds, even though it's the same guy living in the same house, and make these statements about Canadian sovereignty, or say something, pushing back against these threats being made by the president. But of course, the British Prime Minister would advise them very differently. And so instead, what we have is, in terms of political matters, we have the subtleties coming from behind the scenes. And these are the times when we wish that was different. It's the rest of the time, the vast majority of the time, when we appreciate the fact that the monarch is above politics and doesn't get used as a tool of the sitting government, for any sort of political purpose. And so, it's one of those things where most of the time we're glad it works the way it does. And right now we sort of wish he could come out from behind the velvet curtain and maybe threaten Trump with our own things. But we leave that to our elected officials, and we allow the prime minister to be the one to make those things. But I'm sure we can all be rest assured that a big part of what was on the list of things to talk about when Mr. Carney met with the king the other day were these threats to Canadian sovereignty and how that's going to play out, and how the current administration in Canada is hoping to address these things and to push back as much as possible against the Americans.
Barry, always appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Todd. Take care.
All right, take care. Barry MacKenzie with the Monarchist League of Canada. Mark Carney orders a review of F-35 fighter jet purchase from the United States Lockheed Martin. That when we come back. Scott Taylor of Esprit magazine joins us for a chat. Scott, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure.
All right, so this story on the Global News website, Prime Minister Mark Carney's request for a review of the F-35 fighter jet contract and opposition leaders' calls to cancel the contract altogether reflects the reality of a souring relations and loss of confidence in the United States, some experts say, although others are worried about national security implications. So 88 planes, is that's what we have ordered? Where are we with all of this?
So this is an ongoing 28-year saga since we first got involved with the F-35 back in 1997. At that time, it was just on the drawing board, but Canada bought into the project. So it's been an on-again, off-again, ridiculously number of times to the point where we're at now. What we've done is we've agreed to buy 88 aircraft, but the approval from Treasury Board in 2022 was for $7 billion to buy 16. The first 16 aircraft are paid for. But we're not going to take delivery of the first one until 2026, and then they don't expect them to be fully operational until 2032. So even if they rethink this and look somewhere else, we've already pretty much bought the first 16 aircraft, so that's going to go ahead as is. As for the rest of the remainder, there is other options that they can look at. They did hold a competition. This is after the Liberals campaigned in 2015 on not ever buying the F-35. They said that they would pick a cheaper option because it had been a political football for the Conservative government, which said in 2010 that they were going to buy 65 of these aircraft. I mean, so this thing is just, it gets to a point and they stop, they reset, they push the reset button, it goes back again. After the competition, it was decided that the F-35 was the aircraft that the Air Force wanted, and that's why we had in 2022 the approval to buy the first 16 of these things. So very lengthy lead time. This, again, has been considered one of the worst procurement projects in Canadian history, and there's a lot of them in that history. So, and here we go again. Now, if we do push the reset button, we could, further anger our American cousins, and at the same time, maybe it makes sense to rethink this, because right now it's the joke about taking over Canada is no longer a joke. Yeah.
Okay, so what other options might there be?
So the number one was the other plane which was in the competition, which was the Gripen, the Saab, the Swedish-made Gripen, which actually, in terms of industrial benefits, the Saab had agreed they would build the aircraft in Canada, which would have created jobs and had offsets. So it did better because the F-35s are all being built in the United States. So there's not a whole lot of offsets from there. Canadian companies are allowed to bid on parts of the F-35 program, which then they can, pen that out to the wider fleet, if they will. I remember way back when in '97, when they first brought this concept up, the guy that was describing it from Lockheed Martin made it sound like everybody was going to win. It was too good to be true. There was going to be so much money in this project that everybody would win. It was almost like a Ponzi scheme. If you got in early enough, you were going to make a ton of money out of it, and it was at no cost to you because your companies were going to make so much money out of it. That didn't turn out to be the case, but the fact that Saab would have put more industrial benefits in to make the Gripens in Canada is a bright spot. And the other place where the Gripen scored higher than the F-35 was the long-term maintenance costs. So if the Canadian Air Force has to move forward with a mixed fleet, then I think that would be one serious option to consider.
Right. So what realistic timeline is it with the CF-18s?
They are way past their due date. I mean, this is the thing where they were never expected to last this long, and the fact that we started looking for a replacement back in 1997, and we still haven't got them on the ground and out the door yet, is, again, why this is one of the biggest fiascos. Now, the fact that we've been flying them in operational theaters where there's virtually no air defense on the part of the other side. We flew them in Libya. We flew them in Iraq over the ISIS. It's why they've been allowed to be continued in service. Going up against a peer or a near-peer Air Force, they would be outdated at this point. And again, we're looking at watching closely the war in Ukraine and seeing that the manned aircraft are taking less and less of a role to the unmanned. That the unmanned and these first-person view drones that they're using are now the king of the battlefield, if you will. So maybe at some point we're going to realize that we don't need any more than the 16 F-35s we've already bought, and we'll go with a different direction in terms of unmanned.
All right. So, if in fact we wanted to get out of the contract or whatever we have with the United States with the F-35, what type of financial hit, if any, might there be at this point?
Well, we've upfront already allocated the funds for the $7 billion for the 16 that we're going to get. But again, because it does involve the industry being interwoven into this, there are companies that make parts for the F-35 for the bigger fleet, et cetera. We could face a blowback from that in that we would be then excluded from those contracts if we have a punitive-minded U.S. president and a U.S. industry that would bristle at the fact that we're trying to strike back here. So I think that's where a lot of our Air Force generals and people want this thing just to go ahead, because it's been disrupted so many times and we're so far behind at this point that they want to get something, if anything, rather than try to anger the Americans.
All right, so moving forward with technology, and that we would be relying on technology from the United States if we built these things, software upgrades and all of that. And I'm reading in one of these stories, the Global News story, that's a concern as well. How reliant can we be on the Americans to provide software updates, and depending on where the relationship is at any given time with them? Is that a legitimate concern in your opinion?
Well, up until very recently, it wouldn't have been a concern. We've always been America's best ally. They've been there for us, and we would almost never be in any action that wasn't in tandem with what they were doing. We never, ever foresaw the fact that they would be a threat to us and that we would be theoretically using their own weaponry against them. But if they've got such a thing as a kill switch or the ability not to give us upgrades for software, if they become more of a hostile neighbor, that would be a problem for sure. But that's something which was unthinkable 4 to 5 weeks ago. So everything is changing right now, and that's where it's hard for people to even speculate, because I think everybody wants it to go back to the pre-status quo.
Right, canceling, if we indeed cancel the F-35 contract, might that also create some issues when it comes to defending North America? Might the Americans say, well, you want to cancel contracts with us? That's less incentive for us to protect you?
Well, I think the theory of NORAD was that they were always going to protect the U.S. over Canadian airspace. I mean, that's always been, they're still going to use that premise. But, for us to pull our weight in NORAD and be part of that North American air defense, we certainly do need modern aircraft, but that could easily be fulfilled with the Saab Gripen if it's only about defense capability that they're concerned about. And we've talked about this before, this ridiculous notion of just spending at 2% of your GDP, which if the U.S. crushes our economy, we will be spending 2% of our GDP on defense without spending an additional dollar on the military. It's just a fluctuating number. So if it's about capability that they want us to be able to help them defend North America, then they shouldn't object to us getting a different type of aircraft, particularly because the Saab Gripen is NATO compatible.
So what do your instincts tell you? How do you think this all plays out if you had to project or predict?
I think it's high time that somebody somewhere stands up to President Donald Trump and says, you just can't do this. This has got to stop. There's no more talk about annexing Canada. They're a separate country. This is ridiculous. And everybody at the beginning, even Defense Minister Bill Blair, they said, come on, the guy's just joking. He's just joking. I don't think he is anymore. But it's not a funny joke if he is. So, taking Greenland, these things are all, and retaking the Panama Canal, these are all, declarations of war, essentially. And for him to be talking about this and at the same time negotiating with President Putin about annexing territory, and they no longer have the moral high ground.
All right, might we pivot and look at drones and invest in drones as opposed to fighter jets?
So the fact that a story came out recently that the Canadian Defense Department is not even looking at purchasing fleets of the first-person view drones is disturbing, because that means nobody up there is watching the war in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. The developments that they've had to date, that thing has changed the face of the battlefield. It's since 2022 we've seen the Russian military completely reinvent itself. They're everyone keeps saying that they're depleted, but they're actually far more efficient now than they were in 2022. So, what should be the grinding war that's worn them down has in fact sharpened them to a fine-tuned machine. So they're more dangerous now. And of course, we've given NATO in its entirety has given a lot of its weaponry and a lot of its ammunition to Ukraine to stay in the fight. And we have not replenished those arsenals. We've got contracts written and signed to companies, but we're not spinning out on a war footing the machinery and ammunition that's been depleted. So the Russian machine they hired an extra, it was 300,000 people for their defense industry, and they're cranking that stuff out like crazy.
Wow. Okay, Scott, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Take Take care.
All right, take care. Scott Taylor of Esprit de Corps magazine. When we come back, we're going to give away a pair of Moosehead tickets, 2 pairs of Moosehead tickets, and also the iconic Canadian ice cream brand absorbing immediate cost hikes due to tariffs. That when we come back. All right, before I chat with my next guest, I'm going to give away 2 pairs of Mooseheads tickets. The Mooseheads hosting Charlottetown this weekend, March 22nd at 3 o'clock. If you'd like to get a pair of tickets, again, 2 pairs of tickets to give away, be caller 7 and 9 now at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on the action. All right, this story, iconic Canadian ice cream brand absorbing immediate cost hikes due to tariffs. Joining us to talk about all of this is Ashley Chapman, Chief Operating Officer at Chapman's. Ashley, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
How you doing, Todd?
Doing well yourself?
Oh, as good as any of us can be these days.
I know, I know. All right, so when it comes to absorbing cost, what are your extra costs as a result of what's going on?
Well, the first round of retaliatory tariffs did hit us for sure, but it was relatively minor. But it's the next round in a couple of weeks that we're really worried about. It's going to be huge for Chapman's ice cream.
Okay, how so?
Well, let's just say walnuts, pecans, almonds, they will all have the 25% tariff on them. Some of our stabilizers for our product, that's all going to have tariffs. Cherries, that's going to have tariffs. There's a huge list of ingredients that we currently use in a product. That, just like flipping a light switch, the cost is going to skyrocket on these things.
Okay, any idea how much? Like, do you have a number? Are you talking millions of dollars? Are you talking, what type of number are you talking?
Oh, yeah, we're talking millions. So, to kind of frame it for you, probably about 25 to 30% of my margin is just going to evaporate.
Wow.
As soon as these tariffs come into play. So let's just say ice cream is not a high-margin business to begin with.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I was going to say your margin wouldn't be anywhere near 25 to 30%, I wouldn't think.
No. Well, luckily it's, we only use 100% Canadian dairy, so the dairy prices are going to stay the same for a while. We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that we can't get in Canada, we're already getting from Europe and South America anyway. So, but at the same time, some of these business relationships that we have with these companies in the States, these are like 20, 30-year relationships. These are great suppliers, and they are really not happy about what the Trump government is doing to both of our countries.
All right, so this is a classic example of how counter tariffs, some would say, don't work and only hurt Canadians and Canadian businesses. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't ascribe to that. At the end of the day, a bully comes up to you and asks for your lunch money. You give it to him. He's going to come back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Mm-hmm. I think the only way we fight against the Trump administration is to stand together, united as a country, and say, you know what, your threats about turning us into a state are not appreciated, and they're inflammatory, and they need to remember that we are their best ally over the last 100 years or so. It's just ridiculous. So if we don't push back, they're just going to keep on taking and taking until they eventually take our country. That's my opinion on it anyway.
All right, so how long can you absorb these costs, these immediate costs?
Well, we've decided to hold our prices for the rest of this year, and hopefully a little bit of common sense comes into our neighbors to the south, and they realize that this is going to hurt them just as much as us. So, next fall, around November, we'll have to take a look at our costs, and we might have to have a price increase at that point. But the least we can do for the next few months throughout our biggest selling season is try and hold our price to sort of shield the Canadian consumers as much as we can.
What's the response been from your customers? I would think it's been good.
Oh, yes, absolutely overwhelming. There's some really, really lovely people who have reached out to us, and it's been really nice and really well received. So I'd say 99.9% of all of the feedback we've got is overwhelmingly positive. So it's good.
Okay, so if in fact this continues into the new year and it's quite protracted, how much, I guess, what might this mean for the long-term viability of the business?
Oh, we're not worried about that because we're already having conversations with the Europeans about supplying our nuts and cherries and things like that. So our game plan over the next few months, if these tariffs do stick, is we're just going to wean ourselves off of dependence on the United States, and then we'll just continue doing business, albeit at a slightly higher cost than before, because, we got to ship them all the way from Europe. It does cost quite a bit to do that, but not in comparison to these tariffs. And at the end of the day, we want certainty, and everything that's going on with the States right now is just breeding uncertainty, which is absolute kryptonite for any business, north or south of the border.
What are you hearing from other people in business, manufacturing, food, agri, whatever it might be? Are people just astonished that this is happening? It's still almost hard to believe, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But on both sides of the border, every single one of our suppliers from the United States and other businesses that we've talked to in the United States, they can't believe it's happening. They're losing their minds essentially. And when I talk to businesses in Canada, it's exactly the same. Nobody can understand why this is happening, and all of the economists and all of the experts are saying this is a terrible idea. And at the end of the day, it's trade. You should sit at the table with your partners, and if the United States isn't happy about something, then we sit at the table, we fix it, and we go forward. But this is ridiculous in the sense of they're punishing us first, and then they're going to tell us why afterwards. It's sadistic. It's ridiculous, and yeah, we shouldn't stand for this. We deserve more respect as a nation than the Americans are giving us right now.
Are there other ice cream companies following suit with what you're doing, or were you hearing of any of this type of same measures that other companies doing?
Oh no, our I would severely doubt that our two main competitors, which are multinationals, which they hold a lot more business dollars in the United States than Canada. At the end of the day, they do employ Canadians to make some of their products, but my opinion is they don't really care about Canada. The only reason they have factories in Canada to begin with is because of our supply managed dairy. So they can't bring it, ice cream in from the States, right? Yeah. So I would be shocked. I would fall off my chair to hear a similar commitment to Canadians from my two biggest competitors.
All right. So in the meantime, if people really want to support a local Canadian company and they want to enjoy some ice cream, Chapman's is a good alternative.
Absolutely. We're loyal to Canadians. 52 years in this country, and it's Canadians who built us up to this level. The least we can do is support your average Canadian that's going to get hit hardest by this tariff war. Okay,
Ashley. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Take care, Todd.
All right, take care. Ashley Chapman, Chief Operating Officer at Chapman's. And that's quite a move. The ice cream company is absorbing the immediate cost, and he said it's millions and millions of dollars of items or ingredients that they bring in from the United States that will be subject to these counter tariffs, walnuts, cherries, other things. And it's going to cost, again, millions of bucks that they're willing to absorb until they can find other trading partners in parts of Europe and elsewhere in the world. So good on them, a good Canadian company. Support Chapman's Ice Cream. That's the message here, folks. House calls. If you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a buzz now, 902-405-6000. If you'd like to chat with Dr. John Gillis, again, 902-405-6000. House calls when we come back. All right, it's time for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. If you've got a question for Dr. Gillis, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Just as simple as that. Again, house calls. If you've got a health-related question, Dr. Gillis has lots and lots of experience and will do his best to impart his wisdom on you. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for house calls. Dr. John Gillis, welcome to the show.
Good day, sir. Good day.
So what's going on with? I read somewhere, I don't have it in front of me right now, but that there's a bit of a resurgence when it comes to the influenza. That the spring is not that good in this region. Is that true or no?
Yeah, no. The hospitals are really full. There's capacity issues everywhere, and it's influenza and other things as well. But often will have eased off by this time of the year. They just don't seem to be doing so this year.
Any speculation as to why, or is that just we don't know?
Not really sure. It's just it's probably just the strains that are out there, maybe a little stronger this year, and it could be people not keeping up with their vaccine regimens for COVID, influenza, and other things, and that creates a tough storm. I mean, I was away last week, but they were looking at in some cases 14-hour waits in the ER.
Wow, 14-hour waits, unbelievable. Okay, 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Is there anything that people can do to protect themselves against this, aside from, I guess, getting enough sleep and eating well and all of that stuff? That likely goes a long way, I would think.
Well, the biggest things are, get your immunizations. They're not perfect, but they're still far more effective than doing nothing. Wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, wear a mask yourself and hope that other people would do the same if they have any symptoms, so you're not passing things around to other people. Pretty common sense stuff, just people don't always do it.
Yeah, for sure. And not getting run down. I would think that your immune system is much more effective when you're well rested and not stressed, if possible.
Absolutely. You lose sleep, you don't eat well, and it does make you more susceptible, to those things.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Here's an email question to start things off. The question is, the caller moved from Ontario, where she had a nurse practitioner, got a new doctor when she moved here, but has continued to dismiss her concerns and would like to get a nurse practitioner. How does somebody go about getting a nurse practitioner?
Well, it's no easier than getting a doctor. They are typically assigned, from the no family doctor list. I think it's basically the same process. There are a few, separate clinics that maybe people would take them on individually, but for the most part, it's all sort of the same process. Clinics have capacity. They go to the list. I'm not aware of anybody who's just been able to just sign up for an NP. It's all been assigned in that sort of manner.
Okay, 902-405-6000. But nurse practitioners can play a pretty key role in the whole process. And scope of practice expansion is a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I still think there's a ways to go. So nurse practitioners can write prescriptions, order tests, and do basically everything that a GP does. Their funding is interesting. A lot of them are hired by hospitals or health authorities, but there's no capacity in the system right now for a nurse practitioner to bill, or for example, a physician to bill for the work of a nurse practitioner, which might expand the capacity of some clinics. So there's a bit of a hole in how that funding and how that collaboration works right now. And I hear rumors that change is coming, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. Gillis. If you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. I saw the story on the CTV website. I'll read a bit of it and then ask you to comment on it. Health associations are urging governments to ensure Canadian patients don't get caught in the crossfire of the ongoing trade war with the United States. And I'll read a quote from, it says, the announced tariffs on Canadian exports along with retaliatory tariffs imposed by Canada on the U.S. will likely bring significant risks to healthcare systems, including the disruption of access to vital equipment and supplies. Is this something that you've heard about, Dr. Gillis, to this point?
I don't think there's been much happened yet, but it certainly is concerning if costs go up or, products aren't sold or products withheld, that sort of thing, could happen. Like I said, I haven't seen it yet, but it's certainly something, that government and the authorities should be aware of to make sure they have adequate, stockpiles of drugs and other key equipment in case, things do worsen, which we hope they don't.
I would think medical procurement for health authorities, that must be a tough job, I would dare say.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time it's, pretty streamlined, but when systems are under stress, during COVID, it was very hard to get certain things, and we get into a trade war. Perhaps a lot of our supplies coming from elsewhere, costs going up. We just need to be vigilant, I guess, is what I would say.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Folks, give us a call if you've got a health-related question for Dr. Gillis. If you'd like to talk to the doctor, give us a buzz now. It's an opportunity to get some advice from Dr. Gillis. We've got the doctor till noon, so give us a call, 902-405-6000. That's the way to do it. Again, if you've got a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. House Calls continues when we come back. Right, House Calls returns. Dr. John Gillis is on the line. Give us a call at 902-405-6000 if you've got a health-related question or concern. 902-405-6000 is the way to have it addressed. Dr. Gillis, it's unfortunate that we have to talk more about measles, but measles is making a rebound of sorts. This story on the CTV website following a warning from a U.S. official against measles parties amid outbreaks. Dozens of Canadian health officials say they haven't heard evidence of these dangerous events taking place above the border. Still, with case numbers that have already outpaced last year, doctors are warning anyone considering the idea not to do it. Measles, a highly contagious virus preventable through vaccines, has been spreading through the U.S. in recent months, particularly in Texas and New Mexico. Hundreds of cases have been confirmed in the two states alone, and 2 people have died, one of whom was a child. Measles has also been reported in several other U.S. states. In Canada, more measles cases were reported in the first 2 months of 2025 than in all of 2024, according to the country's top doctor. So have you heard about these measles parties before?
Yeah, I mean, you hear talk of stuff like this, and you sort of hope it's not true, but it seems that wisdom doesn't always carry the day in these cases, and this is it's craziness putting people at risk when measles can be very serious, and it has been. There've been some serious cases in the States, and putting kids at risk intentionally seems crazy, but here we are.
So what's the theory? What's the theory behind it? Not that we want to perpetuate it, but let everybody know what supposedly the purpose of it.
Well, I mean, the idea is if you expose kids, they get it. If they're healthy and they get it and they don't get that sick, then they're immune and they're fine after that. But it's still, it's not a smart move.
Okay, how long have we had the measles vaccine? We're talking back in the early 60s.
It's been around for a very long time.
Yeah. Now, in order to get herd immunity, from what I'm going on memory here, I think 95% of the population needs to be vaccinated. Is that number accurate?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. I mean, it varies a little bit based on which condition, but it's probably around there somewhere. As soon as you start to move away from having that many people vaccinated, then that's again when people start to be put at risk. And we're starting to see that.
All right, so COVID was a challenge because people weren't getting regular vaccines just because of COVID in general. But where are we now when it comes to the population and general vaccination levels? What do we know?
It's all over the place. I mean, some vaccines have a high penetrance, some have a low penetrance. Influenza in recent years, has fallen off. Some people don't think it, is not 100% effective. It can be between 50 and 70% effective. So, people have stopped doing it. So the school programs are still good, but again, we've seen a lot of vaccine hesitancy and misinformation in the last few years.
Okay, what are some of how dangerous can it be?
Measles?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for most people don't get very sick. They get a rash, they get unwell, but if you have a suppressed immune system or you have other health problems, it can be fatal, and it has been. And this is the key piece that people seem to be forgetting about.
Yeah, for sure. And what cost associated with the vaccinations are free, are they?
Absolutely. I mean, measles is given as MMR, which is typically given for kids, and people should check, with their provider if they need a booster, because some people do. But yeah, they're free and very safe, been around forever, and they work. It's just unfortunately people stopped getting them.
And you're going to have pockets of people who are going to be fear mongering, or they're going to misinformation, disinformation, all that. I guess the best way to fight against that is to have these conversations that we're having now, just general awareness. But the challenge is with social media and the internet and the era that we're living in, perpetuating these myths is a real challenge that it's hard to combat, right?
Well, it's hard to find accurate sources of information, and there's so much out there that's just inaccurate that it is hard to battle it. But there are reliable sources of information online. The Centre for Disease Control website, Public Health Agency of Canada, are all valuable sources. But there's a lot of people, a lot of sources out there where information is being twisted, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000, if you'd like to chat with Dr. John Gillis, if you've got a health-related question or concern. So what is the main pushback, that the vaccine is unsafe, that it can cause health problems? What are, I suppose we don't want, perhaps we shouldn't even perpetuate the myths.
No, I feel like there's long-standing myths that certain vaccines cause, problems with autism. That's been widely debunked. The mRNA vaccines, the different type that was developed for COVID, that they're, somehow, changing our genetic makeup. There's no evidence that that's the case. Vaccines can cause reactions. They can have side effects, and those are known, and they're quite rare. And again, these vaccines have been around for 50 years. They've kept people safe, and through misinformation and some apathy, here we are again where we have problems.
Hard to believe. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. If people don't have a family doctor, there's clinics, or how can people get vaccinated?
Yeah, a lot of vaccines can be done at pharmacies, and the public health have offices across the province. You can look them up online. Just throw public health immunization into Google, and it'll pop right up for you. So, lots of options.
Okay, 902-405-6000, that is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Vanessa, what was that question? The caller had a question again? Vanessa just fielded a question on measles. Go ahead.
Yes, the caller couldn't stay on the line, but he wanted to know that if he didn't know if he had gotten the measles vaccine as a child, if he could get one now, and what are the risks if he had it but doesn't know?
Yeah, so basically, if anybody born after 1970 should have 2 shots. If you were born after 1970 and didn't have 2 or aren't sure or only had 1, they do recommend getting a booster shot. And you can check in again with public health for that. There's offices all around the province, and they can help field questions and also administer the vaccines. Okay,
back to the flu shot. Is it too late to get a flu shot for this time of year?
No, I don't think so. I mean, some places may not have a stock, but pharmacies still have it. Public health still has it, and a lot of clinics would still have it as well. So never too late.
And COVID? How about COVID shots? Where are we with those?
Yeah, I always suggest people keep up with the latest recommendations, based on what Nova Scotia Health is recommending if you haven't had a booster off the latest version. Again, it's out there. It's getting people sick. The more you can do to protect yourself and others, the better.
What can you tell us about long COVID? Because this is something that we don't hear a lot about these days, but we certainly have heard a lot about in the wake of the pandemic. Have you treated people with long COVID, or what can you tell us about long COVID? Is it hard to determine whether it's long COVID that's going on? What's the ins and outs of long COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't see it very often. I have seen some people in the hospital who had ongoing symptoms, and people, they say people who had severe COVID infections who were hospitalized are more likely to have ongoing problems. Most people have, recover slowly, but there are people out there that have ongoing issues with, breathing, fatigue. There are some cases of, some neurological symptoms. So it can be challenging to pick it up and to treat it, and by the same token, not miss something else. But it is definitely out there, and it is something, to be aware of for a couple of reasons. Mainly that if you're having ongoing symptoms, get checked. But also, it's a big reason to protect yourself so you don't get COVID or you get a very mild case in the first place.
All right. Somebody just sent me an email that says, "Why are COVID tests? Why are they so expensive?" Walmart, for example, and are COVID tests expensive?
It's a good question. I've never purchased one. When we used to have them around, they were free.
Yeah.
Most of the testing I would see would be at the hospital. So I suspect it's a supply and demand thing, and they're not being heavily subsidized anymore as they were for a period of time.
All right. There was a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks about it being 5 years since the pandemic was announced, or that the pandemic came to our country and really changed the world in a lot of ways. What, in reflection of looking back 5 years, if anything, would you like to add to COVID? Perhaps lessons learned or not learned, or just thoughts in general on the pandemic?
I think the biggest thing is probably awareness and preparation that this could happen again. That we need to be better prepared in terms of infrastructure, equipment, gloves, masks, gowns, all that stuff. Domestic vaccine production went away. We had to rely on other countries, and I think on balance, the governments did very well to protect the population. But need to be ready if something like this happens again. And so it's not the big panic that it was.
And do you think that we have made those steps though?
I think a lot of steps have been taken. I think health authorities and provincial governments, federal government are more aware of this, and realize the importance of ongoing research and monitoring. So I think it's better. I think we can always pay a little bit more attention to make sure we don't get back stuck where we were.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for house calls. We've got Dr. Gillis for another half hour. Give us a call if you've got a health-related question or concern. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
Facts.
House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a buzz, folks. Want to hear from you. If you've got a health-related question or concern, now is an opportunity to have it addressed. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Here's an email question from Lee. Lee says, I think I have a partial bicep tear. Had a massive bruise on my bicep and swelling after a hockey game. Would have recalled an impact causing that bruise. Went to my doc, who was unsure about recommending imaging. What would be recovery time from a partial tear? That again comes from Lee.
Yeah, it sort of depends on where the tear is. It depends on if it's complete or not. It depends on a number and what the muscle structure is around there. I usually recommend the thought of imaging, an ultrasound or an MRI to assess the degree of the tear, and then probably, referral to a sports med doc or a surgeon. Some of these get surgically repaired, some of them do not. They just heal on their own. So, but it is getting a full assessment with the imaging is important.
I would think when it comes to recreational hockey players, you would see this quite a bit, right? Because people aren't perhaps in the best of shape, especially at the beginning of the season, and going out and playing hockey can be quite taxing on the body. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, people often don't warm up. They're not in the best shape, and they do things that they haven't done in a while, and that's, when we do tend to see this sort of thing. So, it's important to keep yourself in shape and warm up and all those things. But sometimes it's just a freak thing. It just happens. I've seen it a few times on rugby fields and stuff. And, the key is just get a proper assessment to determine if you need surgery or not. Okay. Shelley, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
I have a question for Dr. Strand regarding COVID. As we all know, it's been around for a while, and it seems like cautionary measures have sort of relaxed more than they were when it started. And we live in an apartment building where the landlord is Indian, and he simply refuses to do anything precautious regarding preventative. So you post something on your own to the board, and he just tears it down and ignores it. I'm wondering, is there anywhere that you can go today to get something from the Department of Health, like some sort of little notice from the department saying what's happening? COVID is on the rise again. Please be cautious, and things that you should measures you take to protect yourself. Is there anywhere you can pop in to pick up anything that's related? Because if we post something on our own, he just ignores it. But I thought if we could find something from the Department of Health, he might pay a little more attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about the public health immunization clinics earlier. They would probably be your best bet. You can look those up online, and they do have offices around the province. And if anybody's going to have handouts or literature, I would think they would be the ones who would have it. And again, you can find those.
Yeah, we're just looking for a little something that we can put up that's, related to COVID from the Department of Health, and he might pay a little more attention to it. But so where do you go to find something like that?
Like I said, the public health offices, they're all over the region. Like if you look on the computer, Nova Scotia Health, Public Health is one of the sites, and talks about all these things, COVID-19 information, and probably some of the stuff with printable as well. Yeah, you can print all of this stuff.
Yeah, because we want some. I'm just wondering, it might be a good idea if, like you said, COVID seems to be on the rise again, and the cautionary measures has kind of slacked off a bit. It would be nice, I think, if we could get a little more public feedback from the Department of Health, like somebody just actually dropping by the building and posting something on their own initiative. I think that would help.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately they're stretched fairly thin, so sometimes it is on individuals to do what you're talking about, is to go find some of this information and to try and share it. But it is frustrating, as you said, when people don't want to have the information out there, take it down.
Okay, Shelley, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello.
Hey, guys. Question about measles.
Sure.
My daughter is 5 months pregnant, and so when the baby comes, what should we be doing to keep her protected from measles?
Well, just trying to think. I think MMR is given at 1 year of age.
Yeah, I read it's one first dose of 1 year, and then if there's extreme circumstances, you can get like a pre-dose at 6 months of age also.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think that's done very often. So really it's, this is where herd immunity comes into this. Make sure everyone in the family or that's going to be around the child is immunized. If you don't have it, you can't pass it to her, and keep the baby away from people who are ill, kids who are ill, situations. You can't control everything, but those are the best measures that to try to avoid illness and to make sure everybody in the environment is immunized.
Then at 1 year old, when she gets the first, or when they get the first shot, how effective is that?
I couldn't pull a number off, but I think the immunity is quite strong right away, and it is meant to be boosted later to make it even stronger. But one dose does give you quite a bit of protection. It's just a matter of keeping it there when you get your booster.
So it is quite effective. I can't give you an exact number.
Great, thank you.
Okay, good luck. 902-405-6000. Mark, hello.
Oh, thanks for taking my call, Todd and Vanessa. I'll just be real quick here. I thought I was having a heart attack last week, and I'm in my 40s, and I was diagnosed with the ECG with something called sinus tachycardia with sinus arrhythmia. I did leave the hospital against medical advice. They told me it could be a 12-hour wait at the ER there in Summer Street. And my appointment, this was last Wednesday, the earliest appointment I can get is March 24th. That's it. Are you still there? Sorry. I'm sorry about that. A lot of people are concerned, and I just want to know, should I be following up sooner than that? And thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
So the appointment was for what? To see a specialist?
You just hung up, so I have to go on memory, I guess.
Okay. So I'm not sure I can answer that without a little more info. Maybe he'll call back.
Okay, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Give us a call back. I think it was Mark. If you'd like to do the doctor's got a couple follow-up questions for you. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. In the meantime, I wanted to ask you about this question, Dr. Gillis. The headline on the CBC website, thinking about creatine supplements for your workout. Here's what you need to know. Creatine provides notable boosts for muscles and skeletal strength with some mental benefits. Creatine's been around a very long time. From what I'm going off memory now. It's been around for quite a long time. Anyway, any advice when it comes to people who are thinking of using creatine?
Yeah, I just think make sure that you understand what it is, how much that you're taking, and that you follow recommended dosing. For most people, it's fine, but some people take too much. It can put strain on your kidneys. And, if you're not educated and don't know what you're doing, it can cause a problem. But for the most part, it is safe. Just get the right information. Make sure you're taking something that's, properly made and doesn't have any additives or other things in it that, might be harmful.
Okay, Mark's giving us a call back. Hello, Mark. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. My phone was doing some weird things. I don't know how much you got of the call. So basically, I thought I was having a heart attack at last Wednesday. My left arm seized up. That was the panic, right? My heart was beating irregularly, and the paramedics were great, by the way. So kudos to the paramedics and all the staff at the QE2. And the ECG report had a diagnosis of sinus tachycardia with sinus arrhythmia. I haven't been able to see my family doctor, and my appointment is next Monday. I'm just wondering if I should follow up maybe sooner than that.
That's a hard question to answer. Sinus tachycardia with arrhythmia is just a description of the speed of the heart rate and some of the pattern. That in and of itself is not particularly concerning. We look for patterns of ECGs that concern us. But the real issue is if you're having symptoms and it doesn't sound like you ever got a diagnosis. You got an ECG and you left. Is that
I did.
Correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Thank you. That's correct.
It's a hard question to answer. You haven't been given an answer. It may be nothing. If you're having symptoms, you should, despite the wait, which is no fun for anyone, if you're still concerned and having symptoms, you should get checked.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Okay, Mark. Take care. 902-405-6000. Here's an email question. It says, what can be done for dry mouth, especially in the middle of the night?
Dry mouth in the middle of the night. Well, I guess the drinking water, keeping yourself hydrated. For a lot of people, it's kind of getting to the root cause. Why is this happening? And often it can be medication, it can be dental related. Mm-hmm. So just getting to the root of it. But keeping water by the bed, keeping the room humidified if you have a dry environment, both of those things can help significantly.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. We've got Dr. Gillis to the top of the hour. Give us a buzz. We got some room for you as well if you've got a health-related question or concern. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back. All right, it's House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question or concern and you've got a bit time to the top of the hour, give us a call at 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us while we await a call or two. A couple more stories that I can run through with the doctor. This one, the headline, exercise snacks even a few minutes a day can boost your health. It's from the CDC website. It says it may seem hard to believe, but snacking several times a day can boost your health and fitness. Exercise snacking, that is. So there's a lot of debate over how much to eat, when to eat, and intermittent fasting, and all of these things when it comes to food. Any advice, Dr. Gillis, when it comes to how often you should eat, what you should eat, and all that stuff?
I think the biggest thing is to try and, follow as balanced a diet as you can, meaning protein, fat, carbohydrates, making sure you're accounting for, vitamins and minerals in your diet, but also to find something that's sustainable for you. I mean, a lot of diets out there, they amount to fads, quick ways to lose weight, but they don't tend to be sustainable because either, people lose weight because of water loss, or they lose weight because they've, dropped their carbohydrate stores, but they're not going to stick to it and end up yo-yoing their weight. So, some people, intermittent fasting works well for. Other people, spreading out. It's really finding something that's sustainable for you, and coupled with exercise, that's going to work, and that's important.
Okay, fair enough. Gary, hi, Gary.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I got a question for the doctor.
Okay.
I have really bad spinal stenosis and a lot of very bad lumbar vertebrae and all that, the typical very badly worn out back. And I am going to be seeing a surgeon for it. I'm in the loop. But I was just wondering if the doctor could recommend anything I could do at this point. Just kind of, is there any way to get any relief at all to it so I'm not causing myself any damage? Like, what would be the best thing to do?
Well, I mean, that's a complicated answer. I mean, back pain has many different causes. You mentioned a couple of them, whether it's your discs or whether it's the narrowing of the canal, spinal stenosis. The starting point is usually activity, strengthening, stretching. Make sure the back is as aligned as possible. Whether with physio, chiro, or massage, those types of manual therapy can be quite effective. And then we look at, what medications can be tried to help with back pain. And there's a whole sort of process there, to start with simple things like Tylenol or anti-inflammatories, and move into drugs that treat nerve pain, and then on up the line into painkillers, opiate painkillers.
I do take amitriptyline for nerve pain. And
so you're already. Sounds like you're already on some of the pathway for this. It's just a matter of whoever's doing that for you. Ask them
I was
to.
basically looking for a way maybe I can help myself out without doing any damage. You know what I mean?
Really the only way to help yourself out is just to stay as active as possible. And
well, I do that. I don't have a car. I do a lot of walking.
Keep yourself moving. You're doing the right things.
Okay, well then, thank you very much, doctor.
Okay, Gary. Good luck. Take care, pal. 902-405-6000. Joe, hello.
Good morning, gentlemen. Dr. Rob, sorry, Dr. John. I called a little while ago, probably about a month or two ago, about my feet, and they're pretty numb. I've had back surgery quite a few years ago, probably about 15 years ago, and there's some. When it comes to back pain, I just deal with it. I don't really take anything for it. But I found that just listening to your last caller there, if I started work at 7:00 in the morning. I really didn't experience a whole lot of pain, but on the weekends, if I, sat down and had a coffee and, wasn't really moving, that's when I really experienced the pain. So just a heads up anyway. But you had recommended seeing a Dr. Barrett, I believe. And I've looked up a couple of clinics, and I haven't been able to find this particular doctor. My feet are constantly numb, and walking around in sock feet is pretty painful. And I'm not overweight. I'm about 185, 5'10". And I'm pretty active when it comes to just physicality stuff, but still, like, nothing seems to be helping it out. And I'm wondering maybe about getting that referral again, or just a reference anyway. And anything else that I can be doing. I mean, I try and soak them in Epsom salts, once a week or something like that. But aside from that, I was swimming at the pool the other day, and that sort of thing where there's very little impact. It feels pretty good, but they're constantly numb, and it just kind of throws off my balance a little bit. And obviously, something I want to take care of. I'm 1 year away from being 50, so it's something that I want to address anyway, right? You start with a good base, so.
Yeah, the podiatrist I mentioned would have been Bennett, not Baird. Dr. Bennett on Gillis.
Okay.
So maybe you should be able to find that with a quick Google search.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So it's Bennett.
Have a nice day.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks very much, guys.
All right, take care. All right, Mark, hello.
Hi, guys. Just quickly, I have Crohn's disease, and I'd like to know if I could take any de-inflammatory medication because of the Crohn's. I have AFib. I got 3 discs that are out, and I have spinal stenosis, so I'm got a lot of pain. I need 2 knee replacements. My body's a mess. But I'd like to know if I could take de-inflammatory medication with Crohn's.
Yeah, I mean, anti-inflammatories, in pill form, can flare up Crohn's disease.
Okay.
They can worsen it. They can cause flare-ups. Not everybody's like that. I see patients who have Crohn's that will use anti-inflammatories sparingly. Like if they have their knee is sore, they've had an injury, or they've had a flare-up of something, they'll take it for a short course. But it can make it worse. Again, it's the type of thing that you should use sparingly, and sort of understand that there is a bit of a risk, and see how it goes with your doctor's supervision. You may not have a problem, but you need to be aware of the potential. Okay.
Yeah, the Crohn's in general are pretty much in check, but that's the one thing I don't need to be aggravated.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, fair enough. Well,
okay.
Hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, Mark,
Appreciate
good luck.
Thank you.
All right, and lastly, quick email question. My 90-year-old mother has had oral thrush for over 2 months. Nystatin hasn't helped. Any thoughts? And then perhaps an underlying cause.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer without looking at it. She may need a longer dose of oral statin. She may need something to swish and spit like a liquid form of nystatin. But really trying to understand why it's happening, it's tough to do without looking at it.
Okay, fair enough. Dr. Gillis, appreciate it. Thanks so much, my friend.
Have a great day.
All right, take care. All right, that's Dr. John Gillis. That's House Calls. We do that each and every Wednesday from 11 until 12. Now we got some time for you. What is on your mind on this Wednesday? The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, way to reach us, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind on this Wednesday? Again, 902-405-6000. Prime Minister Mark Carney appears to have breathed new life into the Liberal Party, as polling pretty much across the board indicating that they are doing quite well, including an Ipsos poll shows the party widening its lead over the Conservatives even further since Carney's arrival. The poll published yesterday by Ipsos Public Affairs exclusively for Global News found that if a federal election were held tomorrow, the Liberals would secure 42% of decided voter support. That compares with 36% for the Conservatives, widening their lead over the Tories by 7 points in just 3 weeks. Polling from Ipsos last month found the Liberals topping the Conservatives for the first time in years, though the number was within the poll's margin of error. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? Do you believe the polls, first of all? Because some people out there don't believe that polls are accurate or believe that pollsters are corrupt. I don't subscribe to that. I know some pollsters. And I don't believe that pollsters are corrupt. But, look, this is about people's opinions. Mark says I think the polls are totally bogus. There's no way that opinion has swung that much for the Liberals. This is exactly what happened in the American election for Kamala Harris. The polls deepened on what region they were more heavily hitting. I foresee the Conservatives getting majority government. That comes from Mark. So what are your thoughts, folks? What do you think about all of this? Do you think that the polls are accurate? And if so, what is going on? Why do you think the Liberals and Mark Carney have erased a huge 20-plus point lead that the Conservatives held for a very, very long time, years as a matter of fact? And I think the departure of Justin Trudeau is playing a big role in it, and what's happening in the United States is also playing a big role in it. And the Trump factor, that's definitely a factor. So what are your thoughts on this? And what can the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre do to pivot to turn this thing around? Because they look as though they're scrambling right now as to find their footing, because the axe the tax is not working anymore, and Justin Trudeau and their attacks on Trudeau and Canada's broken and all of that stuff that got them to where they were, that does not appear to be working anymore. So what might they do to pivot? If you were advising Pierre Poilievre, what would you tell him? What could they do to pivot, and what are your thoughts on this? And who do you trust more? If any, perhaps you don't trust any of these political leaders. But who do you put your trust in more? Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, or none of the above? And who might be best to deal with Donald Trump? Again, 902-405-6000. Also, a local story. Nova Scotia opposition leaders are raising questions about an undisclosed trip by a provincial cabinet minister to U.S. President Donald Trump's inauguration in January. Scott Armstrong, social development minister, says he didn't attend the actual ceremony, but he did watch the event from Canada's embassy, where he was able to talk to business leaders and conduct media interviews. Interim Liberal leader Derek Mombercat says taxpayers' money was used by a minister whose portfolio has nothing to do with international trade. NDP leader Claudia Gender says she takes issue with the fact Armstrong's trip wasn't announced publicly. According to expense reports filed by Armstrong, the total cost of the trip was about $3,000, just over $3,000. So what are your thoughts on Scott Armstrong attending the inauguration in the United States? Didn't actually go to the actual event, but was there for the event. And do you have concerns about this? And also, do you have concerns with members of parliament or MLAs, local MLAs supporting Donald Trump? Is that something that they have the right to do so, despite all of the backlash that's going on, and the trade war and the tariff war and the patriotism and all that we're talking about? Would your opinion of a local politician change if they supported Donald Trump? And would they perhaps potentially even lose your support if they supported Donald Trump? 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Let's get into it. David, hello.
Hi, Todd. Just quickly with regards to the polls, I mean, that's sort of the interesting thing about history, is that it can play out in such unexpected ways. So, you never really know what the future will bring. I just wanted to comment on your conversation with Ray Pleward late last week, about the use of biomass in this province. And I just wanted to agree with him that using biomass for heating rather than centralized electrical production is much, much better. I think the number he gave was about 22% for the sort of biomass electrical generation efficiency, where all home heating systems, combustion-based systems, whether they be powered by coal, oil, gas, or wood, are about 80 to 90% efficient. So that's basically 4 times the amount of output for the same amount of fuel. But some other things to consider as well, too. If you sort of, rather than all that biomass going to one central massive facility, just, hoovering it all up kind of thing, but rather being distributed all over the province to different locations, that's more opportunities for small business to get involved, to sort of, not only sort of truck, but retail that fuel and make it available to the public. But, you have many different sort of small operators involved. That's also good for competition and keeping prices down as well too. But sort of unlike the centralized biomass electrical production facilities, which are based on highly specialized equipment, using wood mass biomass for home heating comes at no additional cost, since all buildings need to have a heating system anyway, and all present heating systems in a building are eventually going to be replaced. So you're not actually spending any additional money. But yeah, just a couple of additional things that that heat can also be used to drive absorption heat pumps, which are sort of heat pumps that basically work off of heat as their power source, and that's another sort of 30% increase in efficiency. But, sort of unlike coal, which is not just the emissions that come out of the smokestack, you also got to mine the stuff, you got to transport the stuff, all of which, or most of which anyway, occurs outside of this province and doesn't benefit the economy. Biomass is something, say, that the HRM already spends a lot of money, collecting, processing, and just landfilling, which sitting there sort of, landfilled, it also will release methane to the atmosphere. So putting that sort of fuel to use and then eliminating that whole coal-based sort of supply chain that, results in jobs and economic opportunity outside of the province, I think just makes much, much more sense on a whole number level. So I just sort of, all of that's an example of how our overall energy policies are very sort of, superficial, I guess would be the word. It's not the exact word. Just not really looking, looking at all the sort of factors and how we actually use energy, and that we can do a lot just in terms of efficiency and using what we have by just doing it better. So it's sort of, rather than spending, all kinds of money investing in sort of, electrification and new sort of technologies and stuff, we should really look at the heat side of the equation and just consider that heat is a sort of waste product of many, many sort of different processes, which could, be put to much better use.
Okay. Thanks for the call, pal.
All right. Thanks, Todd.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello.
Hey, how's it going today?
It's going well. You?
Doing good. A lot of good information in the last call, just a little bit over my pay grade.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my point was just about some of the new infrastructure in Burnside. I was just curious about, so just my own observations, I drive through there every day. The roundabout that I'm speaking of is right at the bottom of Burnside Drive that connects to the new highway.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful new roundabout, all kinds of new signage for crosswalks and all kinds of things, lights flash up, which is great, but it's not exactly a very, the foot traffic through there isn't that prevalent. And then on top of it, already, I think it's only been open for a month, and we've had an 18-wheeler, I'm assuming it was one of the bigger trucks, cut the corner, and he's snapped off 3 or 4 of the signs, including the flashing crosswalk sign, a couple other signs of the roundabout, which is to be expected when you go down there and visually look at the roundabout itself. It's pretty small. It's sort of like, any of the roundabouts we see around the province. It seems like they're all built on the similar footprint. But what I was wondering, I guess my overall point of this would be, shouldn't there be a bit of an allowance for an industrial park where there's, mainly large trucks and large equipment and stuff going through? Why are they still being built at the same small 2-lane, with the same vulnerabilities? Because I guess as I drove by today, I saw, 2 people from the city out there with clipboards. They're marking stuff down. I'm assuming looking at repairing the infrastructure that was damaged, but it's only a month old, and who's to say in another month another truck doesn't come at one of the other entrances and crush a bunch of signs at that one. And it just seems like we're chasing our tail around with this when, they should have, I guess, realized that it is an industrial park. It is large equipment and trucks driving through there. So maybe we should have allowed for that, I guess. That's just an overall observation. I'm not sure if it's been mentioned or talked about before, but it just seems like a costly endeavor where we build something and then immediately it gets ruined, and we're looking at ways to, fix it when it's hasn't even been there a month, and they're looking at ways to rip up the ground, rip up a bunch of pavement, all the stuff they spent a bunch of our money to, put in place.
Yep, valid point, Tim. I think you make some good points. Thanks for the call.
No worries.
All right. Take care at 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. We've got some open lines for you. What would you like to talk about on this Wednesday? Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls continue when we come back. All right, we've got an open hour, folks. Got lots of open lines for you as well. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Again, 902-405-6000. Look, folks, if you're a conservative in this country, or you support the conservative government, or the conservative party, I should say, the opposition, and you were banking on a big win in the next election, things have changed, and they changed in a hurry. It just goes to show, folks, how quickly things can change in politics. For a couple of years at least, the Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, continued to drill and rail against the carbon tax, and the carbon tax was immensely unpopular. It just was. And Justin Trudeau refused to back down from it, would not back down from it. And all his ministers stood behind him and said that it was the right way to go and the right thing to do. Isn't it funny now that all of those same people have had this epiphany that the carbon tax, the consumer-facing carbon tax, was a bad idea after all? I just find that is a bit, what's the term I'm looking for here? Hypocritical, maybe, is the term I'm looking for. It's just quite stunning that Mark Carney could stand there and have the 20 whatever people behind him, most of whom, I think with the exception of two, were in the previous Liberal cabinet, and all completely backed 100% the carbon tax until it was time to cut bait with it, and Justin Trudeau finally stepped away, and suddenly it was no longer in vogue or the way to go. I don't know. I just find that interesting. But nonetheless, the Conservatives are struggling now mightily, and their 20-plus point lead in the polls is gone. As a matter of fact, they're trailing, depending on which poll you reference or you look at, or which poll you believe. And again, some people don't believe any of these polls. Some people think that the fix is in. I don't subscribe to that. I really don't. But look, this latest poll, as mentioned by Ipsos Public Affairs, done for Global News, finds that the Liberals would secure 42% of decided voter support compared to 36% for the Conservatives, widening their lead over the Tories by 7 points in just 3 weeks. So what can the Conservatives do to turn things around? What might they do? This move is not one of them. In the move that the Conservative Party is breaking from tradition and will not allow the media on board planes and buses to cover Pierre Poilievre's election campaign. In an email Tuesday, National Campaign Director Jenny Byrne said costs for travel have risen considerably and has the capacity for digital and remote access to public events. She also said in recent years, media outlets have chosen to tag staff from local bureaus to cover events rather than fly journalists from Ottawa across the country for the entire duration of the campaign. I don't buy that. I don't believe that. I think it's strategic. I think it's about messaging, and I think it's a mistake. That all said, maybe the Conservatives are pivoting away from mainstream media anyway and focus on online media and podcasts and YouTube channels. And we know that in the United States, they have a huge presence and a growing presence here in Canada as well, and a lot of influence. So what are your thoughts on all of this? 902-405-6000. Cheryl, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. I think I heard an ad on your TV, on your channel there, but it was saying Trump says that Poilievre is not mega enough, and he says bad things about him. I mean, one thing Trump is, I don't think he's as crazy as he is smart, sadly, but I think he's doing reverse psychology, and he definitely wants Polyev to win by these reverse ads he's doing, saying that, Polyev isn't mega enough, trying to get the average voter to vote for Polyev by thinking Polyev is against Trump.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know if like you said, if Trump is that strategic or that well thought out or cares that much about what happens in Canadian politics, but I guess that might be a plausible strategy. I just don't know that I give Trump that much credit, Cheryl, but perhaps.
Sadly, I do, but I don't want to. And the carbon tax, it was wrong to tax the average person trying to survive. But back when it was implemented by Trudeau, we wanted to save the environment. Now we need to save our country. Mm. So that's kind of been pushed aside. Like, I don't know how we're going to save the environment at all in the future when we're fighting for our livelihood with these tariffs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for the call, Cheryl.
Thanks, bye.
Take care, 902-405-6000. Corey, hello.
Hello, how you doing, Todd?
I'm well. You go ahead.
Good. Yeah, just idea on, what Polyev and the Conservatives could do to pivot and maybe gain some of the trust of the Canadians back is I think they need to embrace the Canadian patriotism that's happening lately because of the tariffs. Really double, I hate the term, but everybody uses it these days, double down on that. And really embrace, maybe even, like, one of the things that I'm sure everybody notices, that the Liberal Party has a lot of symbolism that looks a heck of a lot like a Canadian flag. The red and the partial Canadian flag in there with the red L. And, just thinking that, those undecided voters in Canada maybe get swayed by the Canadian patriotism of just symbolism. And maybe the Conservatives can do something about that and maybe change the way they profile their party from a visual standpoint.
Yeah, I suppose optics matter for sure, but being patriotic, you don't think that the Conservative Party is outwardly patriotic enough already, Corey?
No, I think they are, but I think they can do more.
Yeah,
I think the winner of this election is going to be the one that's seen as the most supportive of by Canadian, by local, sort of almost anti-American sentiment as well.
Yeah.
More of whoever's the more pro-Canadian even just appears that way, Todd. Doesn't necessarily even have to be true.
Sure.
Just appears that way. It'll be perceived by the public as this is the party for Canada. And I think the Liberal Party is the default to that because of how often it's been in power. But also, I truly believe the red in their symbolism, in their colors, is something that undecided, maybe those that are unengaged voters will look at and go, yeah, that's the Canada Party.
Yeah,
so I'm going to vote for them right now because I care about Canada.
That makes sense. Interesting take.
One more thing, Todd.
Yeah.
Can you tell the traveling public to stop driving in the bus lanes?
Yes, absolutely. Don't do that. And it's a pretty big fine as well. I think it's like $180 fine if you get caught.
Oh, it's all over the place. It causes almost accidents all the time, especially down by where you were there, Roby and Young.
Yeah. Okay, pal. Thanks.
All right,
take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Before I go back to the phones, a couple of emails. Tyler says this. He says, it was not long ago that the Liberals were trying to cancel Canada Day. People forget too quickly and don't seem to care that Carney advised Trudeau for the last 5 years. This email from John says, Polyev has for a long time shied away from mainstream media just like Trump has, neither like to be fact-checked. Second point, a few months ago, Polyev was openly praising Elon Musk, and many of his onliners are almost exactly like Trump's. But recently, since Trump's popularity has been slipping and apparently at least partially causing a slip in Polyev's support, Polyev is no longer openly supportive. Then suddenly Trump announces he doesn't like Polyev. Looks like a smokescreen to me. They are both right-wing and have similar policies. Trump would love to have Poilievre elected. 902-405-6000. What is on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. Tony, hello.
Good afternoon, Todd. I obviously have a completely different outlook or perspective on that. Look, last night, I don't know if you got to see the Laura Ingraham interview or bits of it. It does appear that Trump is in fact endorsing Carney or the liberals. He made a backhanded endorsement there, no doubt about it. I don't care what anybody says, but and you had an earlier caller that said maybe he's trying to play a trick or reverse psychology. Trump, if you look at his actions, he doesn't play that way. He makes statements and he knows exactly what he's saying, and he has something behind it. I don't like Poilievre, if you recall. He says I don't like Poilievre. The liberals are easier to work with. Well, that's obvious. They kowtow to him, going to Mar-a-Lago, going to D.C., doing everything possible to get his love to get these tariffs go away. And the more they did that, the more he just took them apart. Carney moved his company from Canada to New York. When he did that, that's a signal to Trump that he's got something that Trump wants. And or Trump sees something now, there a hole in the wall where he can go through there and get something he wants from him. He doesn't do anything without wanting something for himself. He obviously has no desire to do anything for the people of the United States. Do I think that he really endorses Carney? Yeah, he wants him. Sure he does. He just dealt with a weak-kneed government, so he wants another weak-kneed government. Nothing has really changed in the Prime Minister's, the new Prime Minister's cabinet. They're just the number of people in the cabinet changed, but they're all the same faces. Yeah. Nothing has changed. Yeah. So Trump sees this as a win. And does he like Poilievre? No, he doesn't like Poilievre. He doesn't want to deal with anybody that might talk back to him. Do I think that... I don't think the polls are correct. I think they're running neck and neck, and it'll be a question come the day that the election goes. Who wins it? Is anybody going to get a majority government? I believe if anybody gets it, it's going to be the Liberals, and that's just my, again, projection. But when you start playing with Trump like that and giving him openings, you got trouble. And so don't underestimate what he's trying to do. He wants a weaker government in there. He doesn't like to have to deal with crap that he doesn't like to deal with.
Tony, let me ask you this. Do you, and you may or may not be right, I'm not going to question whether that, but do you really think that Donald Trump puts that much thought into this?
He's still focused on Canada. Don't forget that. You saw how successful he was yesterday with Putin. Yeah. The minute he gets off the phone, Putin bombs Ukraine.
Yeah.
Literally the minute. Not only does he bomb him, he sends in missiles, hard weaponry. Trump doesn't give a crap about anybody but what he sees is important to him. Yeah. And right now, he's still focused on Canada. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Don't turn your back on it.
I'm just not convinced that he puts that much concerted effort into knowing who Pierre Poilievre is and who Mark Carney is, and I just don't know that he's that engaged, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm naive.
I'm not saying you're naive at all. You're not naive, Todd. You may be right. I may be oversensitive to it, but I absolutely admit that I hate the SOB. You know that. I mean, I have never said, I don't believe in hate, but him I hate.
Yeah.
I just hate him for at any rate. I don't want to go into why I hate him. I think that Canada has got to keep their stick on the ice and their eyes on the prize, and let's get this done right, because it could be devastating if Carney takes him lightly, he's in trouble. And if I told you yesterday, he keeps poking him.
Right.
There's going to be a problem. But at any rate, I think he got a backhanded endorsement there. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, bud. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hi, Fred.
Hi. Boy, that was fast. Following Tony. I think we're not giving enough credit to the Canadian the Canadian voter. In all honesty, if you look at Poilievre has turned around and done nothing but a slander campaign, which is now the Liberals are starting to get into it, but which I don't like. But at the end of the day, if you look at Poilievre, he's never held a job in the private sector. Okay, he's been a professional politician his entire life. If you look at Carney has already gotten what? Well, you know what his profile is.
Yeah.
And he's gotten, a big guarantee from the Prime Minister of Britain saying if it weren't for him, they would have been in a world of trouble. So he obviously did a good job over there. And I'm thinking what's happening right now is that the throwing poo against the wall and see what sticks is not happening for the Conservative parties. It's just not. I mean, the negative ad campaigns, if you watch TV, they're on like every 5 minutes, the same thing, and finally you just get peeved off at them. And you're right, this whole thing about him not allowing the message to get out through reporters traveling with him during the campaign, that is so wrong. So
well, it just contradicts campaigning where you would want to get your message out, would you not?
Exactly. Well, this goes back to the days of Harper, when Harper used to take questions from the news media.
Yeah.
He'd take like 3 questions and that's it. And those people who were going to have the 3 questions knew exactly what they were going to ask him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's coming down to. It's controlling of the media, and I really don't like that at all.
Okay, pal.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Fred. Take care.
Bye.
All right, 902-405-6000. Clinton DeVoe's giving us a call. Hi, Clinton.
Good afternoon, Todd. How are you doing today?
I'm well, you?
I'm well. So I just throw in my 2 cents here. I guess
Sure.
Everything's happening. So we know that Donald Trump refused to work with Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and this third time of either conservative leader. So one thing.
Sorry, Clinton, you're cutting in and out. Can I put you on hold and maybe get you in a better cell area in a minute or two? Okay, I'm going to put Clinton on hold. He's cutting in and out, and maybe he can get himself into a better cell area. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Morning. How you doing?
Well, you?
Not too bad, sir. Just leaving to your previous caller for the one you just had, Tony, and I think he's pretty passionate, rightfully so. A little sentimental too, but it is what it is being a former American, and some of the things I guess he's right on, and some of the things I guess I can't really see happening, but let's hope not. Second thing is, I think a little constructive criticism here before I get into the main reason I called is maybe you need to have a show where you take a day off political. Maybe get some new blood callers and maybe some facts about how the bridge is going with the tolls and the item I'm going to get into in a minute. And just kind of step away because it's just lambasted with political, and every day about this and that and the same callers. And I love your show to death, but sometimes the hand reaches over to turn the knob down a little bit, and I hate to do that. So maybe just the thought that you can step away from the political for a day and maybe talk about something going on around here. And the main reason I called is what is going on around here. I don't know your station advertised or mentioned yesterday that we're number 1 on the crime list.
Yeah.
And the counselors mentioned that the data shows all this stuff, which I think is bull. I listened to your show in my office, and it's the reason I do is because the news is probably the top news.
Yeah.
And when they come up with that yesterday, I was like, damn, we're more crime than a city in Connecticut, Bangor, Maine, and I think there was another one.
Yeah, the story was from the Fraser Institute, and I'm actually going to have a guest on tomorrow at noon talking about this. Halifax is more than twice the property crime rate as Boston is the headline from the Fraser Institute. So
that's what it was. I couldn't remember, Todd. It was a major city, and can you imagine Boston? We're higher than Boston, and they're going to get on there, the counselors and this person and that person, someone on the police board, and say this and that, and try to defend. And it is what it is. That's their job. But it's nasty around here, Todd. I've been saying that to you in the previous comments that I called about the guns, and I still nag on that. And it's a dangerous spot. It's it's something that we got to, maybe we got to dig into deeper and start opening up that can of worms and looking inside and finding, especially with the buildings going up, the population growing, who's coming into these buildings, what kind of people are coming in here. All that stuff plays a part of it. And I think, good you're going to have that show, and I think people's eyes are going to open. That's a pretty big comment to be one of the highest crime rated per population. That's scary to what we used to be.
Yeah, the headline certainly grabbed my attention. So again, tomorrow at noon, I'll be talking about that story. So yeah, it was an alarming headline, and I think worthy of conversation. And I take your points. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz. We get some time for you, get some room for you as well to the top of the hour. 902-405-6000. Hello, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Good. I just think it comes down to something really simple when it comes to Pierre Poilievre and Carney. And the reason why I'm going with Carney is a simple fact. I don't trust Pierre Poilievre. I've been listening to him the last 3 years, giving negativity. And that being said, I wouldn't have voted for Trudeau. We needed Trudeau gone. I voted for, over my years, every political party. But what it comes down to, my simple way of thinking, they're all going to try to razzle and dazzle you. But the bottom line is, I don't want Canada to go the way America's going. And that's why I trust Carney more than I trust Pierre Poilievre. That's just my simple thoughts.
Okay. Thanks for the call. Appreciate your comments. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Todd. How you doing this morning?
I'm well, you?
I guess. Great, thank you.
Excellent.
Listen, this one's kind of out there.
Okay.
I heard on CTV News that Halifax Rage Room is selling packages where you can go and you can smash pictures of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance or Elon Musk and pretend that you're hurting them or, destroying them kind of thing, right? And I don't know, in this day and age where feelings are running so high, emotions are so high, we all have different views on Trump and Vance and all that stuff, right? But to monetize hatred and promote it, I don't know if that's right. I don't think it should be actively promoted within a business to hate your neighbor and hate the leaders of a country that's been, an ally of ours forever. And when you direct your hatred towards leaders of another country, you're directing it towards its citizens as well. So you're promoting hatred against Americans as well as the leaders of America. So I just think, I don't think it's right. I don't think it'd be any more right to promote hatred against, the gay community and, have rainbow targets set up that you smashed kind of thing, or black people for that matter, right? We should kind of respect each other a little bit more than that and raise the bar a bit, especially here in Halifax, in Nova Scotia, where we wouldn't allow a person to have their family name on their license plate because it offended a person, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think we should tone down the rhetoric and start getting along with each other a little bit better and having more open dialogue in a positive way.
Yeah, I certainly would never go and participate in that. When I saw the story, I kind of dismissed it as apparently the proceeds are going toward the food bank. I don't know if that matters or not, but I think it's a bit childish, I guess, for lack of a better term. But that's my takeaway, Scott. Is I would have to say that I agreed with you. I don't really see the point. I think it's a little silly, but it is what it is. I guess it's not. At the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. But I take your point, and I would say that I agree with you.
Yeah, it's encouraging more hatred. It's not promoting any kind of dialogue or positivity at all.
Right? Yeah. It's to me, it just seems silly. But anyway,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Thanks for the call.
All right, Todd. Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Wendy, hello.
Hi there. I am just calling to say that there's a lot of talk about voting for Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney. We don't vote for them. We vote for our local candidates, and I think it's really important to stay clear on who our local candidates are, because they are the ones who actually are going to be representing us. They're the ones that are going to be bringing up the issues that are important to us. For instance, we're in the midst of a housing crisis, and I'm not hearing that solution from either of those two parties. They're talking about housing builds. They're not talking about affordable housing starts. That's really what we're looking for at this point. We need proper, affordable housing here in Halifax. And the only party that's talking about that is the NDP. So we have Lisa Roberts in Halifax. We have, we have lots of great options that we should be looking at. And those are, it's just good to look local. If we're talking about being Canadian, let's differentiate ourselves and look as local as possible.
Yeah, no, and I take your point, but I think that people generally look at voting when they say who they're going to vote for. I get it that you vote for the candidate, and we don't vote for the prime minister or the leader of the party, but that's the tradition of Canadian politics is that when you vote for your local candidate, you are inherently voting for the potential or the prospective prime minister of the country as well. Same as the premier when you're voting for your MLA. But I get your point. It could be said, Wendy, that Lisa Roberts, look, the NDP are not going to form a government. We know that there's zero chance that they're going to form a government. Not to disparage Lisa Roberts, I think she'll be a good candidate. And I think the NDP bring a lot to the table, but a vote for Lisa Roberts would be even less effective.
No, you've got that wrong. So we're traditionally an NDP seat here in Halifax. The Liberals were only in during the Trudeau wave.
So what did I get wrong?
So right now, the Conservatives in 2021 only got 13% of the vote. They don't have a chance here in Halifax.
No, I'm talking about federal. I'm talking about federally. The NDP have no chance of forming a government federally.
No, they don't. But they can certainly hold seats.
Okay, they can hold seats. They can hold seats. But how much influence would a NDP seat in Halifax, NDP MP have in Ottawa? How much influence would they have?
They'd be supporting that our local voice. So we want to. Lisa Roberts is a local individual. She lives here in Halifax.
Yeah.
She will support people in Halifax. Not to take anything away from, we have some excellent other candidates. The other candidates, they don't have the experience, the breadth of experience. Lisa was our MLA in the North End for 5.5 years. She's gone through multiple elections. She understands what it's like to serve publicly. The other two candidates haven't done this. They're untested, untried. Why are we saying that they should be equal to her? Her experience speaks for itself.
Well, it's not a matter of whether they're equal or not. It's a matter of when all is said and done, how much influence somebody might have in Ottawa ultimately. And somebody may look at Lisa Roberts and say, Lisa Roberts is well-intended. I like her platform. I like how she goes about her business. I like her passion. But when all is said and done, the NDP have zero chance of forming a government. And again, that's just the reality of it. So some might say, I would rather have park my vote with one of the other candidates in hopes that they may form a government, and that might be better representation for the city.
Fair enough. Possibly that's. I agree with you that the Liberals could well form a government. Yeah. They may form a minority government, and in which case the NDP have been known to work with the Liberals in creating social programs. That's where we got dental care. That's why the Liberals actually had support for people under Trudeau.
Yep.
So it's not bad to have a voice there that actually will work for the people.
Yep.
And right now, the people need help. We've been helping the Conservatives and the Liberals and Conservatives both support big business, big bank. those guys take care of themselves. You know, we need to start looking after the people.
Okay, fair enough. Wendy, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow from 11 until 12. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board is doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.